Welcome back to Summon Tesla, and today we're going to be discussing superchargers versus urban chargers. I am quite surprised how many people ask me the question, what is the difference between a supercharger, which looks like this, and an urban charger, which looks like this. Now, to be fair, the biggest difference that I have seen so far has got to be, well, basically your kilowatts. So a supercharger is running around 100 to around 120, I would say, on average. And this is what a supercharger is charging at. And a urban charger is going to run around 75. I believe that's the peak, 75 or something along those lines anyway. So this is what we're charging at a urban charger, 68 kilowatts, 368 kilometers per hour. Not too bad, not too bad. All that means is it's what you're charging at. It's your rate that you're charging at, how much faster you're charging. Now, it's unconfirmed. I've talked to a number of people, and I myself had a hard time confirming this, but a supercharger, once again, looks like this, will more often than not, it's a shared system. So let's say you have supercharger A, A1 and A2. If an A1 and A2 both have cars in them, both of their chargers are less. Whereas an urban charger, which looks like this, if you pull up to A1 and A2 side by side, I have not seen a drop. In fact, it just seems to be staying more or less around the same thing. So all this means is that it's not a shared system. And unlike the superchargers, which are shared, I think that's one of the biggest advantages at least in my opinion. Superchargers in general, I think, are great just because they're all over the place and their entire network is only growing. And because the network is growing, you can go just about anywhere and have a supercharger. At the same time, urban chargers are also growing. So what is the biggest difference? I think the biggest difference between superchargers and urban chargers is that you're going to find a lot more urban chargers than you will find superchargers eventually. Currently, I believe there's still more superchargers than urban chargers. So, at least from what I found. Now, this question was asked a few times, and just recently somebody asked this on Instagram. Actually, I'm going to give her a shout out. I'll put it right up here. And it's an important question, I think, because I had a chance to talk to a few people at superchargers and at urban chargers myself. And I asked them, hey, do you know what the difference between this and a supercharger is, or this and an urban charger is? And it's funny because most people go, there's a difference? In other words, they don't really know. In fact, I had a gentleman literally very insistent that there's zero difference between the two because, well, they're superchargers. A lot of people call urban chargers superchargers. I think there should be, you really should look at the difference because although it's still a supercharger, it still charges at a ridiculously fast rate. The supercharger, as I showed you guys, is charging at around 100 kilowatts, whereas the urban charger is, I believe, peaked out at 75. 120, I believe, is a supercharger, actually. So you do have a big difference, and that difference matters somewhat, I think. I not really, because, see, one of my biggest pet peeves with superchargers is a lot of superchargers are put in great locations, close to restaurants and so forth and so on. Now, if I show up to a supercharger with about 30% or 40%, and I go inside to order food, odds are by the time that food is made, depending on what it is, and shows up on my table, I'll get a notification that my charging is pretty much done. So now I got to run out and move my car. And I think the important part to understand is that why are you moving your car? Well, you see, there is a very key factor here for idling. In other words, the moment that you finish charging, there is a charge. It can go anywhere from, well, I've seen it as low as 15 cents, I believe I saw a picture of, but I've seen it more often than not around 50 cents per minute, all the way up to $1.50 a minute. The ones I've seen with my own two eyes are about 50 cents a minute. And you get charged for taking up the space essentially. But I believe that only applies if let's say there's more than half of the total stalls taken up. So the point here is that the superchargers, although they're very fast, I think they have an advantage in speed, but not necessarily an advantage in comfort. And it sounds silly because a lot of people ask me, well, how long does it take to charge? When you are anywhere near a supercharger or urban charger, believe it or not, I keep saying it's too fast. I actually would prefer to go a little bit slower, and this is something that the urban charger gives you. So when you go to the urban charger, because it's a slower rate, I could at the very least, have my lunch that I ordered, or have, whatever I may have ordered, I can actually sit down and enjoy it and eat that without having to run out and move my car. So Tesla, in a way, it's different than most cars. With Tesla's superchargers or urban chargers, it doesn't take forever to charge. And I'm running more and more into people who are saying the superchargers are too fast. Hence, they just sit in their car and kind of wait it out because it's easier than if you go and, run inside, want to pick up something to eat, and then have to run out because, well, you have to move your car. That's essentially it. It's really difficult to explain some of these details if you don't actually own one. Now, if you do own a Tesla, obviously it makes sense because you kind of start playing with it and you kind of start testing what everything does. At least I do. I think when it comes to Tesla and the supercharging network, this was probably one of the more genius ideas they could have done, because frankly, these cars without the superchargers, especially for long trips, it would be a tricky kids. It would be a tricky thing to pull off, on a longer trips, on longer extended trips, I should say. Wow, my voice is cracking. So, with all that said, I'm gonna have to say thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoy this video. It is a little bit short, I guess, but yeah, it's a very basic thing, and I looked up a lot of information with regards to what differences are, and ultimately me going out there and testing it myself, this is what I came up with. So with all that said, I'd love to say thank you very much for watching. I'd love to say thank you very much for supporting the channel. Subscribe, please do. We need to hit 100 subscribers in order to officially change our YouTube name to Summon Tesla. So I kind of need your help there. Thank you very much for watching. Until the next video, don't forget to comment below. The more you're commenting, the more questions you ask. You can follow us on Instagram, you can follow us on Twitter, and you can follow us, on YouTube. So anywhere you guys have a question, ask. I'll go out and I'll make the video on it. Thank you very much again. Have yourselves a wonderful day and drive safe.